Okay, I'm just waiting for notification to appear on the screen. Okay, the meeting is now recording, so I begin by taking the sederant for the Petitions Committee on Monday the 25th of October 2021. So I have apologies from Councillor Burns, Councillor Chalmers, Councillor Donnelly. I can see that we have Councillor Dryborough, Councillor Harrow, Councillor Horsham, Councillor Logan, Councillor Nayland, and I have apologies from Councillor Scott. I can see that we have Councillor Convery substituting for Councillor Scott. Do we have Councillor Anderson who should be substituting for Councillor Chalmers? No. Okay, officers in attendance today are Stuart Laird, Andre Martucci, Geraldine McCann, Lynn Wiley, myself, Carol Lyon, and we have Yvonne Johnson, who is the lead petitioner for the McNeill Street petition. In the absence of a chair this morning, can I ask if anyone is willing to put themselves forward to chair the meeting?
Can I ask if Jerry Convery would chair the meeting? He's got experience.
No, Chair, I was always opposed to a Petitions Committee, so I'll not be chairing it. I think the administration should have somebody chairing it.
Well, who's there for the administration? Mark Horsham?
I'm here. I'm sorry, Geraldine wants to come in.
Sorry, Geraldine, you're on mute.
The terms of reference will not allow a member from the administration to chair. It has to be a member from one of the other groups.
Eileen, do you wish to chair it?
Well, somebody will need to talk me through the procedures. I don't know. I was at missed the last meeting, but if you talk me through the procedures, I'll chair it. Yep.
Thank you very much, Councillor Logan. Okay, so we have a normal declaration of interest on the agenda today. The minutes from the previous meeting we can't actually approve because we only have Councillor Horsham that was at that meeting who's present today. We then have the petition, which is requesting the resident-only parking in McNeill Street, Larkhall. We have the lead petitioner present, Yvonne Johnson. Officers from Roads present are Stuart Laird and Andre Martucci. What we would do is we would firstly hear Ms Johnson in support of her petition, really to add comments that aren't in the papers, because obviously we already have those. Stuart and Andre would then have the opportunity to respond to the comments and to address their submission. Ms Johnson would have the opportunity to respond to their comments, and then we would open up for members' questions.
Right. That's fine.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Logan.
Thank you, no problem. Wait a minute, just to get back to that one. Okie dokie. Well, can I ask, is there any declarations of interest from anybody? No? Everybody fine with that? Thank you. Then, if I'm correct, we're moving on to Ms Johnson. If you would like to give us your submission on why you sent why the petition is before us this morning regarding residential parking at McNeill Street in Larkhall. Over to yourself. Thank you.
Hi there. First of all, thanks for allowing me to speak this morning. I'm new to this as well, so I could possibly be repeating a lot of information that you already have. I actually received the comments from the Roads Department with regards to the petition and spoke to a few of the residents since. yes, we agree that there is a lot of common issues with regards to parking in that roundabout community facilities. However, the residents who have stayed here for over 40 years have said they've been complaining for that length of time, even before they reopened the railway in Larkhall. There has always been an issue with parking at certain points in McNeill Street. They feel as if the roads department have taken into account, that they need to give commuters ample parking, because there is parking in King Street, Caledonian Road. There's also the railway car park, which is a substantial size. We have Union Street in Larkhall to facilitate the local shops and that. There's also parking in Wellgate Street, a very large car park behind St Thomas's Lodge, and there's parking in Victoria Street as well. So we feel as if all that has been taken into account for the commuters and to serve the local area. However, the residents feel as if they don't expect to be able to park outside their house. No, certainly not, but within a reasonable distance. The second point is that the car park beside the railway station is never full. People choose not to use that and choose to park in McNeill Street. Now, the residents who stay in McNeill Street are, as I said in the covering opening statement for the petition, they're very elderly, a lot of them. The majority of them chose to purchase a house here because it's local to the community and the facilities and that. It's all on the one level. And they just feel as if their views are not being considered. Yes, there has been conflict which may not have been reported. I personally have witnessed conflict between my neighbours at number 50, number 35, 39 and 54. And to be honest with you, the conflict has been with off-duty police officers who also choose to park in McNeill Street. And one of the confrontations that I witnessed was an off-duty police officer screaming at the top of his voice to the resident who lives at number 50, the sooner you realise this is a public road, the better. Now, I personally, I work and I've seen people parking there from 7 o'clock in the morning and they're still there at 10 o'clock at night. I don't know where they go. I can only assume they're going in the train somewhere. We know the shifts, the exact shifts of the serving police officers in Larkhall, the day shift, the back shift and the night shift, because we know the cars, you can see them walking into the police station and they're away for 7-8 hours at a time. Yes, but there is room in Caledonian Road. There's also the big car park, but people choose to park in McNeill Street. We also recently had resurfacing work done in McNeill Street. Now, there was a disabled parking bay being put in, and it took them 3 attempts, 3 separate days they had to return because they couldn't get it done because of other people parking their cars there the full day. The recent resurfacing work that the council completed, the first week they were replacing some of the curbstones and they put cones out. They just moved the cones and they parked in McNeill Street again, to the point where a neighbour spoke to one of the workmen who said, look, if we come back tomorrow and those cars are still there, the curbs will not be replaced. They are being left. That's how bad it's getting. I've got all these. Last Thursday, unfortunately, we weren't able to submit the pictures to you. You have pictures that were taken in September last year from myself. My neighbour took pictures on Thursday there. However, by the time she passed them to me, because of data protection, we couldn't submit them because of the registration plates. And there were 16 cars parked on both sides of the road in the length of 7 houses just. Now, none of them were residents' cars. So that was from Provost Gate to St David's Place, and that was full. So this is not just a new thing that's happened, as I say, and I know if you take it forward, there's going to be a review in 18 months of the parking in Larkhall. However, these residents have been waiting years and they just feel as if they're not being listened to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. Who's going to lead for the department?
I'll do that, Chair.
Okay, it's Stuart Lear. Thank you, Stuart.
Okay, thanks very much. Just for members of the committee, just to give you a bit more background into the waiting restrictions that are in place. The current restrictions were reviewed as part of the Larkhall streetscape works, which date back to roughly 2006. So what we have on McNeill Street is no waiting and no loading on the south side of McNeill Street from the cross at Union Street, more or less all the way through to the other side of where the railway bridge is. So as I said, no waiting and no loading at any time. On the north side, there's restrictions are in place for some of that length. And as Mrs Johnson referred to, there is on-street parking available, more or less where the residential properties are. The usage of the park and ride facility is one that we've been monitoring for a considerable length of time. Prior to COVID, the car park itself, the park and ride, was somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 full. There is on-street parking available on Caledonian Road, and we're conscious that potentially there's other parts of the town that are used for town centre car parking or potentially commuting as well. Since COVID has came, obviously the levels of usage of public transport has dropped, and we've recently been undertaking reviews of the park and ride facilities across South Lanarkshire, and obviously Larkhall forms part of that review. So during September, the park and ride facility was roughly about 30% full. So you can see there's been a drop in commuting and obviously using the park and ride facility. With regards to the sort of wider issues of car parking in the area, as we made mention in the report, is our proposal to undertake a review of the parking in the wider town centre area, and this would form part of that review. Again, for members' awareness, the Economic Development Team undertook us a town centre strategy last year, and as part of that process, there was consultation undertaken and community engagement with numerous bodies, and all residents of Larkhall had the opportunity to comment on that. And some of the themes coming out of that did refer to car parking as well. So again, parking within the town centre and commuter parking formed part of the feedback that was given. As referred to earlier, it is our intention to review the car parking again within the next year, and we would also intend to take any review forward sooner rather than later, bearing in mind that we're at the committee today. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Stuart. Are you quite happy, Andrea? You don't need to come in? Okay, thank you. Miss, or Yvonne, sorry, I'll just call you Yvonne. Have you any questions or anything you would like to put to Mr. Laird, Stuart, regarding his input?
Just, it was very interesting to hear you confirming that the park and ride facility is not being used to full capacity. And yes, I do appreciate that, you know, we've had COVID. But as I say, we've noticed for a while, even before COVID, that facility is never full to capacity, however Mint Street is. So that's people's choice. You have given the public an opportunity to park somewhere, however they choose not to. And that's where the problems come in. Thank you.
Do you want to respond, Stuart, before I go to members' questions, or are you happy?
No, I think that the position has been set out in the papers as well, so I'm quite happy.
Lovely. The next part then is, has any questions from members? First one I can see is Ian Harrell. Ian.
Thanks. I obviously don't live in the area, and see, when we're discussing this type of thing, a map would be useful, because all these are just street names. They could be anywhere. I don't know where, McNeil Street or Caledonian Road or whatever it is. They're all just names. That would be useful. That was it. Thanks.
Is that your submission at the minute?
It is, yeah.
Thank you. The next one I see is Lynn Nayland.
Thanks, Chair. Am I allowed to ask Stuart a couple of questions?
Yep, either or. If you tell me who you're asking the question of, thank you.
It's Stuart, basically, or Andre, whether. I'm just looking at, reading the report, the background comments from Roads and Transportation. I'm looking down the third bullet point, which says some cases where demand is such that it is necessary for some permits to incur a charge. If this were to go ahead, would there be a charge for these parking permits to the residents? And if so, what would it be?
Through you, Chair. As things stand at the moment, some of the members of the committee might be aware that there's a wider conversation at other committees with regards to the charging of residence permits when it comes to existing ones that we already have. So I'll ask Andre if he can come in and explain a bit more background to that.
Okay, Andre, would you like to come in and give a further explanation? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. A while back, there was a review undertaken of charging for residence permits, and it was proposed to introduce a fee to cover the administration of issuing the permits. This was put forward as a potential saving, and was rejected. However, a year later, it was put forward again, and this time it went forward, and it was proposed that each permit be issued at a charge of £10, and this would cover the administration of producing the permit, posting it out, etc., etc. That was introduced in the budget earlier this year. Sorry, I'm just getting my ears mixed up with COVID. And so far, we've only renewed a certain amount of permits, but they've all been charged at £10 each. It was proposed to roll out the charge as and when permits get renewed, which is on a 2-year rolling programme. However, in September, a motion was put before the committee that this charge be dropped. 2 of the local members proposed this. After debate, that wasn't supported, but a new motion was taken forward that we write to all permit holders and ask them if they are willing to pay to be in a residence parking permit zone. So we're currently about to undertake a referendum of everybody who has permits or doesn't have permits in a zone. And once we have the results of that, we'll know whether we're going to continue with permit schemes or not. That was meant to be happening imminently, but we're still just waiting on approval of the letter that's to go out. And once that goes out, we'll be giving people 4 weeks to respond, and hopefully we'll be able to report to committee after Christmas, early in the next calendar year, as to the results of that referendum. So currently, as it stands, there is a £10 charge for each residence permit, but that may change in the coming months. Hope that explains everything, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have you another supplementary? Your hand's still up.
Yeah, so just to clarify, at the moment, it's a £10 charge for 2 years per permit.
Correct.
And the second question I had is, this is obviously in the pipeline for about 18 months' time, when the area itself will come under review. If this particular scheme were to be brought forward, and this is a question for either Stuart or Andre, what would be the additional cost to the council compared to doing it as a bulk in with other areas? Thanks.
Is that you, Stuart? Are you answering that, or is it Andrea? Andre, sorry.
It'll probably be two of us again.
2 points.
Yeah, I think there's the process of promotion of any traffic regulation order that's outlined within the papers. There's obviously costs associated with that element of it. In terms of if there was a residence parking zone introduced, then there's obviously the administration costs for setting that up, and obviously the operations of enforcement that go along with that as well.
Sorry, supplementary, Chair, if that's okay. So yeah. Would that incur an additional cost to the council because it's brought forward, or would that cost remain the same if it were to fall in with other schemes being implemented at the same time?
Technically, there would be an additional charge because it's additional work that's been undertaken to manage a particular zone.
Right, sorry to labour the point, Chair, if you'll pardon the pun. What could you give us a rough idea of what that additional cost would be?
That would be difficult because there's a lot of it would depend on the size of it as well. So it's very difficult to say. I don't know, Andrew, if you can maybe give a bit more information.
As you say, Stuart, it would depend on the size of the area that got permits. We wouldn't just look at that short section of Neil Street in isolation. We'd need to look a wee bit further because it might just have a knock-on effect and just move the issue somewhere else. So we'd have to make sure that we covered a wide enough area. How big that would be, I can't say at this time. But there's the administrative costs of promoting the traffic regulation order. There would then be, if it were to go ahead, the cost of issuing the permits, which the £10 fee would cover. And then there would be some signing that would need to be erected to notify people that it was a permit zone. And as Stuart said, the enforcement side of it, albeit the parking attendants are currently on McNeil Street enforcing the existing regulations when they're in Lark Hall. So the enforcement of it wouldn't be too great. In terms of putting a value on it, though, at this stage, I couldn't begin to do that, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the information.
Thank you. Could you put your hand down if you're finished, Lynn? Thank you. And the next one I have is Fiona Dryborough. Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you, Chair. So I do know the area very well. I drive down McNeil Street every single day. I work in Lark Hall. It was just a couple of things, Stuart, that Stuart Laird had said. You were saying that there was a drop in commuters. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. There's maybe less people using the car park, but I don't think that necessarily relates to a drop in people using the train. People don't like using the parking ride because they've got to go under that tunnel. I can understand why people don't want to walk that way, to be honest, especially if it's late at night. But I can totally see where, there's all of these houses are all bungalows, as it were, for people, which should make it then easy access. And it is constantly just parked by people using the train. So I know you're saying there was a reduction in commuters, but I don't think just because there's less people in that car park, there's not one car park in Lark Hall that is full. I'm here every single day in life. So there is not one car park that you'll find is actually full. Unlike, where I live in East Kilbride, all of the car parks have ample space in them. People are choosing not to park there, and that's just a fact. So I really agree that you're saying a reduction in commuters because there's less people in the park and ride car park. I think they're just not parking there. They're parking wherever they want, but they're not parking in the car park.
Are you answering, Stuart? Thank you for the department.
Yes, of course. Thanks, Chair. The figures that SPT have given us verbally over the sort of pandemic period have indicated that right at the outset, when the pandemic struck, the passenger numbers for bus and rail dropped dramatically. It was as low as 15% at one point. Obviously, with restrictions changing over time, the number of commuters have increased. Now, the figures that I have are actually ones that were quoted to me last month, but it was roughly rail travel has seen a drop of about 40% at the moment, and bus is a drop of about 30%. So I would envisage that those numbers will probably continue to increase over a period of time. And whether they'll get back to pre-COVID levels is really a wider topic for debate within the industry itself. So when we're talking about the sort of overall numbers of commuters, those are the sort of figures that have been quoted to us. When it comes to equating that to car trips, who would then come and use a park and ride. I can't really quote any particular figures for that, but it would be probably the comment I would make on that was that the level of usage within the park and ride car park and any other parking facilities within Lark Hall will come under pressure again as the commuter levels start to increase over a period of time.
Just a supplementary, Chair, then. Sorry.
Sorry to get my unmute back on again. Do you wish to ask something else?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So, Stuart, I know what you're saying, but what I'm trying to point out is just because there's been a reduction in commuters, it's not reduced any of the parking on McNeill Street. It's reduced maybe people parking in the car park because they can't be bothered and walking through because it's not the best walk, I've got to say, where the park and ride car park is possibly not the best place, but there are other car parks. But it doesn't really reduce the number of people who park on McNeill Street. It's mobbed, it's full. So I'm just trying to say, whilst you're saying that in your report that there's a reduction in commuters, there may well be, and there was obviously during restrictions less people using the train, but it's not reduced the number of people parking in the street. It doesn't really, it doesn't marry up,
Okay. That you, Fiona?
Thanks, Chair.
Fine. The next person I have is Mark Horsham. Mark.
Hi, my question's to Stuart, and I'm like Fiona, I do know the area very well in the car park, and I've used the car park before, and it has never been full any time that I've used it. Now, you said pre-COVID that the car park was 3/4 full. I was looking through the papers. Do you have a figure on the capacity of the car park? What the actual capacity of the car park, how many cars it can hold?
I don't have that information to hand. Maybe Andre has. He's been looking at some recent survey information.
Yep, Andre's got his hand up. Andre, would you like to answer that, or can you answer that?
Yes, Chair. 200 spaces is the capacity.
Chair. Mark, do you have something else you want to say or ask?
Yeah, I'm glad it was a nice even number so I can work out what 3/4 was. So thank you very much for that. And this question is probably to Miss Johnston, is how many non-resident cars do you think parks along McNeill Street?
Non-resident cars, we could have up to about 20 in the space between Provost Gate to St David's Place, which is the length of 7 houses.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, for that. So there is capacity within the car park for these extra cars. Stuart, yes.
Sorry, yes. I mean, I think when it comes to looking at where people are parking, that's something that we would need to get a handle on, where commuters are parking. There is on-street parking on Caledonian Road, which runs more or less parallel with the railway line. So there'll be, I would expect there to be commuters wanting to park there, and down onto the McNeill Street where we're talking about this morning. I was out there on Saturday, and the section of road that we're talking about, there was available on-street parking at that time, and that was a Saturday afternoon, admittedly, not necessarily a working day, but it's clear that there is pressure on parking, either between residents, commuters, and probably town centre parking as well. So as is mentioned in the report, to try and balance all that out is difficult. And one solution that's been presented might not be one that's going to suit everyone, and that's a difficult situation that we find ourselves in as transport professionals when we're trying to look at how we manage a particular area. And as we made reference in the report, it is our intention to undertake a wider review, so that if we decide to change things, then what those impacts of changes will be. And obviously we've received the petition, and we'll incorporate those comments and views from the residents when we undertake a review.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Stuart.
Right. That's beautiful. The next person I have on my list is John Anderson. John Anderson.
Thanks, Chair. Apologies for being late. Just couldn't get in there with a connection here. I don't know if it's the high winds we're getting in East Kilbride, though I see everybody else is in, and I've been thrown out qualified. A few questions, if I may. First, to Stuart. If there was a parking permit zone in this street, would it necessarily mean that the cars would go into the car park, or would they park in other streets? Because Fiona said they don't like walking in through a tunnel or whatever to it. Would that just create a problem elsewhere? The other question is, we have various parking zones in South Lanarkshire, some restricted parking permits to 1 or 2 to a house where a car is registered and the other ones don't get it. What would you envisage if this went ahead? What kind of restrictions would there be? Would it be restricted like that? So I'd just like to maybe answer those, please.
I think in terms of your first question, that's where we've sort of alluded to, possibly prior to you getting a connection. We've made reference to the fact that we wouldn't necessarily consider one street on its own in isolation. We would need to consider what the potential knock-on effect of a restriction would be, whether that's a parking zone or some other form of restriction. The current practice and sort of policies are that we wouldn't necessarily do one street in isolation. We would look at a full area, and that's comes down to again the fact that if you concentrate on a small section of road, it will have a knock-on effect because people will, and it's been referenced to earlier on in the committee, that if you do a short length, then it may have a knock-on effect to either an adjacent street or further along the length of road in question. So it is always a consideration that we would have when we're looking at implementing any kind of traffic regulation order, what the impacts of that order would be, not only on residents themselves, but how it would impact on the viability of the town centre and other activities that go on, either for the travelling public who use Larkhall as a through route or as a destination as well.
Thanks. And my second question, could have a supplementary to that, Aileen? You're going to answer the second question, part of the second question, Stuart?
Just repeat it, John.
Yes. I was asking about how many parking permits you reckon this area would get. Some in South Lanarkshire only get a parking permit to a registered car to a specific house. Others, there's various ones. And just on the Stuart's response there, would that mean we'd need to have a consultation with the wider areas that would need to be considered for parking permits rather than just McNeill Street? Thanks.
Sure.
I'll answer the second point first, if you don't mind. When it comes to consultation for any traffic regulation order, then they are open, and technically anyone can make comment on our proposals. So that could be residents, or it could be anyone who lives or commutes. We have some recent experience of seeking people's views on residents' parking zones in a similar situation nearby a town, a railway station. And predictably, what you find is that you get two polar opposites of views. You get one set of views from residents and one set of views from commuters. Now, obviously, that's something that we would obviously consider both sides and then take a view on. The traffic regulation process involves that consultation process. You'll be aware from the correspondence that members of the committee get that TRO process is essentially a 4-stage process. So from start to finish, it involves that basis of that there will be consultation undertaken. I'm going to pass over to Andrew to answer the point with regards to the number of permits that would potentially be allowed per property.
Okay, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Anderson, in a situation like this, where it's a town centre situation, we would need to limit the number of permits issued to each household. It's not like the large residential areas in East Kilbride. Because there are other restrictions in the area, we'd have to make sure that each household had a fair number of permits. So we couldn't give everybody 4, as happens in East Kilbride. We would have to limit it. As Mrs. Johnson has suggested, quite a number of the residents are elderly and they do have mobility issues. So I would foresee the number of vehicles that they have, because they're small properties, they've probably only got 1 car each. So probably 1 or 2 permits each would be sufficient for them. But again, that is something that would need to come out in the consultation process.
Okay. Are you quite happy, John?
Yeah. I think it would be, it all come through in the consultation would be quite important to see it. Plus, as Stuart said, it's not just one street, it would be the surrounding streets. So thanks.
Thank you. I do see your hand, Yvonne. But have you got a specific question that you want to ask? Because you are going to get the last say and you'll be able to encompass anything that you want into your last statement. But if you have a specific question, I would let you ask the question. But if it's just, that's how it's going to work. The Roads Department would have their say, and then you will have the absolute final say in the matter. But if you had a specific question, but it has to be a question.
So you're fine. I'll just wait to the end.
Okay, and you can sum up, and I'll give you the last chance. Okay, thank you. I actually have 2 questions, if that's okay. One is to yourself, Yvonne, and what I wanted to ask you is, if the police in particular, or anybody that you know, was parking, and obviously you alluded to a confrontation between an officer and, I'm assuming it was a resident, has anybody spoke to, say, the powers that be within the police office there in Larkhall, or to their superiors, to maybe try and amicably resolve the situation? Or do you know that?
I only have third-party information. The workmen who were working on the resurfacing of the road had actually said that, and now whether it was them or the council that had been in contact with the police department, and they said they weren't parking there. And it's also been raised with Councillor Burns.
Right, but I just meant, if yourself or anybody had actually spoken to anybody. No, that's fine. And my next question is to the department. What I wanted to ask is, if there's to be a really big review in Larkhall of traffic and parking and all sorts of situations like that, and it's quite imminent, or it's quite soon. Can I ask if, in isolation, we took the request this morning, and then by the time it gets set into motion, would it not just take as long for that to happen as if it was all getting done maybe at the one time? Or would that be first and then it would be set? I wanted to know the timescales. If you're just about to start in Larkhall anyway, would it be just as quick one way as the other? That was basically my question. Yeah,
my recommendation to the committee would be that we undertake the review as quickly as possible. That way, because what may come out in the review process are other restrictions that may be required or requested. So I wouldn't want to go down the route of one traffic regulation order that may have a knock-on effect with other areas, and then we end up having a situation where we need to do another traffic regulation or a series of traffic regulation orders, one after the other. In terms of the time it takes to promote any traffic regulation order, it can be anywhere between 6 and 9 months to undertake that process. It can take longer, particularly where there are objections, and if there are objections, then that may involve a process involving Transport Scotland appointing essentially an adjudicator, a reporter that would come in and listen to both sides of any comments that are made. He would then, or she, I should say, he or she would then undertake that review that they would do, and then make a decision and report that back. So when it comes to traffic regulation orders and the promotion of them, they can be fairly confrontational potentially. You might get one set of people supporting it, and another set of people not supporting it, and that's where any particular difficulty comes in. As an authority, when we're trying to implement something, we would like to implement something that people support and have the backing of the community. So I think, as I said, my recommendation to this committee would be that we undertake the review and consider the comments that have been made this morning, as well as others that we'll receive through that process.
The next person I have is Jerry Convery.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This has been quite enlightening. Just for Yvonne's, I hope you've been listening to this, Yvonne. You have been, because you've maybe opened up a can of worms, because I've been involved in East Kilbride with the parking, and so is John. And at the end of the day, and Stuart, I don't think you or Andrea have basically answered the question to what Lynn was asking earlier on. How many houses? Because it wouldn't just be McNeill Street. We're talking you would actually contact hundreds of houses. Would that be a fair analysis?
Yeah, potentially it would be of that scale.
I know. Well, no, that's fine. You've answered that. So it's for Yvonne. I'm trying to get the picture here. So we would go for talking about McNeill Street with say 30 houses. You're talking about hundreds of houses, and then at the end of the day, and Andrea, he mentioned it earlier on there, the majority of people who, according to him, who live in McNeill Street are disabled people. They disabled people could end up paying a levy to park in their own street. So I just want to make you aware of that, because I've been dealing with this, and I'm the guy that moved the resolutions to stop parking getting charged for, but all my other colleagues voted for it. So it's not as simple a thing. I hear what you've got here today, but this thing will grow arms and legs. And as Stuart said, by the time they do that consultation, it could take months and months and months. Thanks, Chair.
Well, thank you. We'll keep to the business, and
that is the business as well, Chair.
Yeah, I know. I don't have any other hands up. So as we finish with our question and our debate, if we are, I'm going to ask Stuart Laird to sum up for the department, and then I'll come to yourself, Yvonne. Is that all right? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I'll keep this very brief. All our comments are within the papers, and we've obviously had a input from the local residents as well, which is very welcome when it comes to the information that we have with actually taking forward any review. And as I said, our recommendation would be that we undertake a review of the restrictions that are currently in place in the town centre area. We consider what the residents' comments have been to date, and we'll obviously seek further comments as well from other people that use this area. So, in terms of summing up, as I said, the recommendation would be that we undertake the review of parking within the town centre.
Yvonne, it's up to yourself now, and please feel free, anything you were going to ask or say, put it into your final submission, and you have the last word. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I take on board what Councillor Convery and Anderson have said. And yes, it would be very helpful if you would all look at a map of Larkhall, because Larkhall is not on the same scale as East Kilbride. And coming back to the point where you're moving the issue elsewhere, if you put McNeill Street into resident-only parking, I don't know where you would be pushing that issue to, because if you look at the map, and I appreciate you don't have one, there is no other streets that you could push this issue to that would be closer to the train station. It's going to be further away. And if you look at the businesses within the area, you wouldn't be taking any trade away from them, because you've got all the space in the parking right and the other car parks in Larkhall, which has been discussed today, and it's been confirmed that they're never full. So there are plenty, ample parking there for other people. And basically, if you were talking about the amount of permits and visitors coming to visit people, that may cause a problem. Well, I don't see why it would, because you've got the park and ride car park, which is never full. So visitors to people, if you were only allocated, they can be quite big houses in McNeill Street. So I would say maybe 1 permit would be a bit tight, 2 would be perfect. You could give one of the permits to a friend who's coming to visit them, and the rest of the people could park in the car parks which are never full, which are not that far away from McNeill Street. That's why people choose McNeill Street to park. That's everything I have to say.
Sorry, you're quite sure before we get into debate, because you have the last word. Are you quite happy?
Yep, quite happy, Councillor Logan. It's just we feel as if we've waited long enough. I know you're saying you're doing a review in 18 months, and for it to go through the Roads Department, 6 to 9 months for legislation and that. However, these people have been complaining for over 40 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Lynn. No, you, Lynn, the administrator. Are you there? Oh, it's Carol, actually, today. Sorry, Carol.
Yeah, I'm here, Councillor Logan.
Thank you. Now, before we go into debate, do we ask the department and Yvonne to leave us, or is it an open debate?
No, it's an open debate, Councillor Logan. It is a public meeting. Just to remind, though, that the Petitions Committee only have certain options open to them.
Mm-hmm.
So we can either agree that the issues raised today deserve further action and agree to refer the petition to another council committee, officer or other organisation with recommendations, or they can agree that the issue raised does not merit further action, or to refer back to the resource with recommendations for further actions. Okay, those 3 bullet points are within the report at section 7.
That's fine. I wasn't sure. I just couldn't remember if we went into private debate or if it was left open.
Yeah, it's open.
Thank you. Well, you've heard Carol this morning. Could I have your thoughts and your views, please? Thank you. Fiona, I see your hand up. On Lynn Nealon.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree, well, with Mrs Johnson, actually. I think if we could refer it back to whatever resource I know they're saying in 18 months. 18 months is a long time. There is only one residential street there. Behind, I mean, I know maybe some of you haven't bothered to look at a map, but I do know the area, so I didn't need to look at a map. But there's car parks behind the shops. So you've got a car park for B&M, you've got a car park for the co-op, massive car park for the park and ride. So you're not moving any of the people who are going on the train or whatever, going to the work, you're not moving them any further. But if you put McNeill Street being resident-only parking, there's no other residential streets there. So you're not pushing them to go, and nobody's going to go all the way down to the bottom of Millhew to park, because it's going to be absolutely miles away. So I don't see that there would be an issue, and I don't see that waiting 18 months doesn't really make any sense. It's quite for me, I would like to see this, whatever action we can do from this committee. I don't know, put it to the resource to ask them to, I don't know, progress it just now or look at it or do a consultation, whatever we can do from here. But I do think we should be able to do something. That's all.
Thank you. Lynn Nealon.
Thanks, Chair. I too am familiar with Lark Hall. I've having worked there for almost 10 years. I know McNeill Street and the geography roundabout. So I do feel for the people that live there. I really do. And as Stuart knows what's coming, I too suffer from something very similar, being in close proximity to a town centre and railway station, and have ongoing problems with parking, which has just picked up again quite badly this last fortnight. She said, looking out the window at the row of parked cars. So I have complete sympathy, and in view of the fact that it does seem to be a standalone street, I would echo what Fiona's just said and urge that it goes before the appropriate committee for decision. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Well, Fiona, you'll need to move form or put your words in formally here.
Okay, then I don't know if Carol can help me then. So I would move then that it is put to the resource committee. Would it be the community and enterprise, or would it be back to roads? I'm not sure. But for for them to
consideration,
start the process just now to actually to see about, you know, putting in residential parking, however that process is carried out, rather than wait 18 months to start it just now for McNeill Street.
You'll second that, Lynn?
Yes, I'm happy to second that.
Okay. Is there anybody got any other views, or anybody otherwise minded? Do we agree? Agreed. Thank you. So you'll have heard that, Yvonne, that your petition has been moved now to Enterprise Resource Committee, which is the parent committee, or is the parent committee for roads and transportation and various other things. And basically what the recommendation from this morning is that it should be, your street should be looked at as soon as possible.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
As I said earlier, it'll not be tomorrow or the next day.
Yes.
You know, it's not overnight, but it is. That's the overall it's a unanimous decision of this committee, so that's where it's going to go. I don't know when the next committee is going to be, but whenever it is, that will be a part of the business.
Thank you.
But if you've been dealing with a councillor or councillors from Larkhall, then they'll keep you, that they can move that along. No, move it quicker, I don't mean that. They can tell you the next part of the business.
Okay, thank you very much to everyone.
And just for your information, I know McNeill Street and the whole of Larkhall very, very well, so I wasn't sitting blind this morning.
Thank you.
Right. Jerry Convery, I'll give you the final bit. Sorry, you're in mute, Jerry. You're muted.
Sorry, Chair, sorry. For Yvonne's information, the next committee is the 7th of December.
Okay, that's where it will be, on the 7th of December. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I hope that was okay.
Chair,
I'm going to keep on this in case I'm ever thrown into the deep end again.
Chair, sorry, can I just clarify here? So we are referring this to Community and Enterprise Resources Committee,
Carol, yeah.
For further consideration.
Well, our recommendation from Fiona and seconded by Lynn was that it should be
for the process to be started.
Yes.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you.
That's right, Fiona, isn't it?
Yes, thanks, Chair.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you very much.
All agreed?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your attendance.
Thanks to the Chair.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
I could feel